Indigo Disc DLC has recently come out, and instead of progressing with the plot, I decided to shiny hunt all the starters that became available from Generation 1 to Generation 9. It certainly took me a while, but I eventually managed to find all these different colored variations of the starter Pokemon, or the first partner Pokemon as Game Freak calls them. I knew I wanted to prioritize shiny hunting them ever since the trailers teased that these adorable Pokemon would be coming back. So, starting things off, in order to get the starters to spawn in the terrarium, we would have to complete certain blueberry quests, and these needed 3000 BP or blueberry points, which you get by doing BBQs or blueberry quests throughout the terrarium. Coupled with the fact that you have 4 biomes and a terrarium expansion quest for each of them, that meant a total of 12,000 BP to unlock all the starters. Now, with the help of online multiplayer, it definitely makes your life much easier to farm all those BP. However, just a quick tip, if you do choose to do things solo, it will take longer, but it's definitely not impossible. And the best advice I can give is to be more efficient with completing several BBQs at once. For example, if you have one where you need to sneak up on a Pokemon and another one where you have to catch one, these 2 missions can actually be done together. And by doing so, you could actually knock out the quest faster and hopefully get more of the red quests, which will give you more BP and again, make things go by a lot faster. Also, a huge PSA, please remember to save before you encounter the shiny starters. And also, make sure that you bring a Pokemon that knows Spore, such as Breloom or Brute Bonnet, as many of the starters know a recoil move and could accidentally unalive themselves if their HP is low enough. Other than that, also make sure to stock up on lots of Pokeballs as the starters have a low catch rate, and also don't forget to use your turn 1 Quick Ball for much better odds. In a previous video of mine, I also did shiny hunt both Charmander and Scorbunny via breeding, and I even got a double shiny for the latter, as well as the 3 Paldean starters, which I shall quickly insert right here. With that being said, let's dive right into the other shiny hunts. And I'll be separating the encounters by the biomes, as well as giving some personal tips or observations along the way. Okay, starting out with the Canyon biome, probably the easiest one to start your shiny hunt. Over at the Canyon Plaza, by popping a grass sandwich, you'll be able to encounter Turtwig all over that area. From the footage I have up, you can actually see me continuously entering and exiting the Canyon Plaza from the text bar location changing. And by doing so, I can effectively reset all the nearby spawns without having to go too far or setting up a picnic. I also like to position myself in the middle of the entrance and then panning my camera to the right, waiting a little bit for the spawns to show up, and then panning to the left and doing the same thing. If there's no shiny, then I just walk backwards to trigger the location change and walk out again to get new spawns, and I just rinse and repeat until the shiny appears. Next up, from the Canyon Plaza, if you head straight down to the area with the Skarmory and Cranidos with a grass sandwich, you will only encounter Trico there. Fortunately, I found mine almost immediately after walking in. It's definitely a very recognizable one and one of my favorite shiny starters. While Chespin counts as an encounter in both the canyon and polar biome because it's located in the Chargestone Cavern that runs underground both of these biomes. I typically like to take the exit from the central plaza and actually go out to the polar biome, and you'll see a cave straight ahead. Just head in there with a grass sandwich, and Chespin are going to be the only spawn that you'll see in the cave. Of course, there are going to be a couple of static spawns that will always appear and will not be overridden by any sandwich that you eat, and this would make it a pretty straightforward hunt. Next up, for Lipton, I employed the same strategy I did with Turtwig at the Canyon Plaza, only this time round I popped a fire sandwich instead. After that, Tepic is also very easy to locate. By exiting the central plaza to the canyon biome, they are the only fire type that spawn there, and the brown and rocky terrain also makes it very easy to spot the shiny as well. Lastly, Squirtle, being a water type, shares the encounter pool with other water types that spawn in the area, so using a water sandwich actually won't be as efficient. Instead, you'll want to find a Squirtle outbreak by date skipping to cycle through the daily outbreaks quickly. So from your date and time settings, I found that you don't actually have to skip the actual date, but you can just go back 2 to 3 minutes and the outbreaks should change in-game. I was able to get a Squirtle outbreak in a good location where they only spawned in the narrow body in front of me, and I had enough space to put down a picnic. So once I had knocked out 60 to get increased shiny odds, I could just stay in place and use picnics to reset the spawns. Another tip is that the Squirtles can go underwater, so make sure that you have a swimming Pokemon so that you can encounter them, or you may want to move slightly further away in order to let the Squirtle naturally come up to the surface before you battle them. Next up is the Savannah biome. Starting off, we have everyone's favorite Charmander that can be found near the Savannah Rest Area 1. All you have to do is to just pop a fire sandwich and it should be the only encounters that you see, with the occasional random Doduo or Rhyhorn running past. Again, I've already hatched a shiny Charmander way back when, but I did decide to bring the little guy along in order to get some footage for the video, and it's just so adorable looking at the little babies just crowding around me. Fennekin can be found to the north of the Savannah Plaza, and I would recommend finding an outbreak for it instead, as if you do pop a fire sandwich, Magmar and Magby do spawn in the same area. As Fennekin is small, it can get hidden by the grass, so you do want to pay slightly more attention. Fortunately, it does have a pretty noticeable shiny, so you should be able to spot it pretty easily. You can find Snivy to the east of the Savannah Outdoor Classroom, and again I would recommend an outbreak as there are Execute and Executor that spawn in the same area, I was lucky enough to get an outbreak in the area next to the marsh, where it was flat and had no grass around it. Not only does Snivy have a subtle shiny, I also wanted to avoid what I had to go through in the teal mask, where every single Pokemon was tiny and it didn't help with the tall grass covering it up. I admit that I even almost missed the shiny because it was just a slightly darker green than the regular one, and sometimes the lighting in this game can mess up how Pokemon look in game. So what would be a very easy to spot shiny becomes much harder to spot, and you will start second guessing yourself like what I did. Thankfully, I went over to check it out and was rewarded. Rowlet can be found in the same areas as Fennekin, which is north of the Savannah Plaza, and thankfully the Rowlet outbreaks are pretty common from experience. Unfortunately, my Rowlet outbreak was in a bad spot as there were several bushes where Rowlet could spawn, and again it makes it pretty hard to see, very easy to miss. I was somehow able to find the shiny, but again I would recommend that you find an outbreak in a good location, preferably in a flat area like the one that my Fennekin outbreak was in. So if you do see a Rowlet outbreak, you should go check it out to scope the area first. If you're lucky, there may even be a shiny in the first few spawns. And while it didn't happen to me for this particular Pokemon, it has happened to me with others. Totodile can be found in the pond next to the Savannah outdoor classroom, as well as the huge body of water to the northeast of there, where Bruxish and Dewpider also spawn. It is a rare outbreak, so I would not reset if I managed to find one, but I would suggest the location in the bigger pond as it is easier to keep track of the spawns. And this is probably the only time that I would actually recommend an outbreak in the water, as it makes it easier to spot the shiny. The second last starter that I shiny hunted because its outbreak was quite rare, even rarer than the Totodile one, Sobble can be found directly west of the Savannah outdoor classroom in the marsh area. Even though they're the only water type that can spawn there, I recommend finding a mass outbreak to increase the number that spawn at a time, because by using a water sandwich only, I was able to get only about 3 to 5 spawns each time. Fortunately, I was able to find this shiny relatively easy, and I think in fact the time it took me to actually find the outbreak itself was much longer than finding the actual shiny. Moving on to the coastal biome. Kicking things off with Grookey, which is the most straightforward one, as all you have to do is to pop a grass sandwich and head south of the coastal rest area onto the beach, where you'll find mostly Grookey and Blossom. Also, a quick tip for shiny hunters: if you are trying to shiny hunt for every single Pokemon in the Indigo Disc Pokédex, I would recommend, before you unlock the starters, to actually shiny hunt for Blossom in this location first, as they will be the only thing that spawns on the beach. Once you have unlocked Grookeys actually spawn more commonly than the Blossom, and you'll most likely have to rely on a Blossom outbreak, which is also quite rare instead. Bulbasaur can be found in the grassy areas near the coastal outdoor classroom. While the location I got for this outbreak was pretty narrow, I was still able to get a decent number of spawns, but because of the bushes everywhere, they can also spawn inside of them, so you want to make sure to check in those spots or to use your auto battle feature if you're still unsure. You would also see me jumping around on my Coridon in order to give me some extra height and would allow me to scope the nearby spawns better. Now luckily the shiny spawned right in the open. Even though it blended into the surroundings, it's actually pretty noticeable, especially if you have lots of the same Pokemon spawning nearby. Again, the Bulbasaur outbreak is actually pretty rare, so if you do find an outbreak, I would recommend you to try your luck there. This was my second longest shiny hunt and another rare outbreak. I had hunted for Chikorita in a previous mass outbreak, but I didn't have much luck there, so I decided to try again in a better location. And apparently this time I didn't even have to try it all, because the moment I reached the area, a shiny spawned immediately that I didn't even have my recording on when it appeared. So they can appear all around the grassy areas of the coastal rest area as well as the coastal outdoor classroom, but I would definitely recommend trying to get a mass outbreak of Chikorita in the north of the coastal rest area as it is more wide open. Froakie is also another easy one to get. All you have to do is to pop a water sandwich at the coastal plaza, and just by running around that entire island right up to the bridge, they should be spawning everywhere and are the only encounter. I do have to warn you that they can spawn inside the many flower bushes on the island, and being a more subtle shiny can be quite easy to miss. As you can see, my shiny coincidentally did spawn among the flower bush, but I was thankfully able to spot it in time. And I would also recommend to get a higher vantage point to look down from so that the grass doesn't hinder your view. Tied for the second longest shiny hunt was Popplio. Now this could have gone much faster because Popplio outbreaks are the most common starter outbreaks that you'll find. From how much the game lacks around water, to Popplio having a subtle shiny, to the light making things difficult to spot, please, for your eyes and sanity, find an outbreak that spawns on land. Because while they mostly show up on the water, it is actually possible to get a Popplio outbreak that's on the shore. An easy way to spot the shiny is to pay attention to the color. The shiny one has a pink color while the regular one is blue. If you can't find an outbreak on the land, the next best thing is to find one that's right next to shore so that you can easily put down a picnic to reset all the spawns. Next up, Mudkip is actually a bit tricky because they only spawn inside the torchlit labyrinth, and given the narrow space and minimal spawns, it's not the most ideal place to shiny hunt. I was, however, able to find a certain spot inside where I hugged the opposite side of the cave wall and waited for as many Mudkip to spawn in before running far enough away to despawn everything and just rinse and repeat until the shiny showed up. It's actually a method that's similar to hunting for Feebas in Kitakami. I do want to note that I did have a Mudkip outbreak, so perhaps that could have helped with the increased spawns, but Mudkip outbreaks are also pretty rare, so I would suggest if you do manage to find one, you can go inside the cave. In this footage here, I show how you can get to the same spot along with a steel sandwich, and I was able to get a good amount of Alolan Diglett and Dugtrio to spawn by hugging the wall. So perhaps you don't really need a Mudkip outbreak and you could pull it off with essentially just a water sandwich. Because like I said, the Mudkip outbreak is pretty rare and I've only seen one Mudkip outbreak so far. Lastly, we have the polar biome. Now, both Piplup and Oshawott can spawn all over the lower areas, both on land and in water, but I recommend finding them in outbreaks. And a very important thing to note, just like with Poplio, you want to find an outbreak that is on land and in a good location. Of course, RNG plays a huge part, but it really makes a world of difference when you're able to get both a good number of spawns and be able to reset those spawns consistently. able to find Piplup in about 10 minutes. Meanwhile, my longest shiny starter hunt for Oshawott was easily over 4 hours, and it was definitely an experience. Basically, it was a triple whammy of the lighting, location, and constant blizzards that really stretched my patience thin. In this footage right here, this was actually my third Oshawott outbreak, the previous two being in the water, which automatically made it 10 times worse. And you probably would not even notice that a shiny had spawned until I pointed it out. Scorbunny and Chimchar both spawn at the higher parts of the polar biome, and an easy way would be to pop a fire sandwich and make your way down from the polar outdoor classroom 2. I found that there were more Scorbunny spawns than Chimchar, so if you're trying to go for the latter, perhaps you could try a mass outbreak instead. Now, because I wanted to be efficient, I decided to combine my Chimchar and Torchic hunts. Speaking of Torchic, they can only spawn in one cave in the polar biome where the Terra Matang is. I would recommend taking it out first so that you don't have to worry about running into it accidentally in the cramped cave and wasting precious seconds from your sandwich. Again, you want to hug the right side of the wall and let the Torchic spawn in on the opposite end. If you're just hunting for Torchic, then go to the middle of the cave and set up a picnic before quickly running back to the right side and repeat these steps until the shiny appears. For me, however, after determining all the Torchic in the cave had spawned, I ran out of the cave to despawn them while also looking around the Scorbunny and Chimchar that spawned outside. I was able to find a shiny Chimchar that way. Last but not least, the one that gave me the most trouble, Cyndaquil. Oh boy, where to begin with this? For some reason, they've made it so that Cyndaquil, like Torchic, only spawns in one cave, to the southeast of the polar rest area. The problem is, this cave is so small that you can only get a maximum of 3 spawns inside, but most of the time you only just get one Pokemon spawn. To make matters worse, I could not get a mass outbreak to appear even after popping a fire sandwich while near the area. Apparently that's supposed to help with making outbreaks appear, and in fairness, I did the same and was able to find a Sobble outbreak. I was there a while date skipping for outbreaks, but with no luck. And there were a few reasons that I could think of. Number 1, perhaps my luck was just bad. Number 2, the current Milcery event outbreaks were occupying a good number of outbreaks that would normally appear, because I did get a Milcery outbreak near the cave. Third was, Cyndaquil mass outbreaks just cannot spawn, which would be quite weird since every other starter can have one. Another thing I want to note is that while testing with a fire sandwich, I managed to get a small group of Cyndaquil to spawn inside the cave. So theoretically, an outbreak would be possible inside there. If you're able to get a Cyndaquil outbreak, or if you're trying to find one, please do leave a comment below because I am pretty curious. Until now, I have been doing a couple more date skips just to try my luck, and I have not seen any centipeal outbreaks. Due to this, I eventually resorted to breeding. And with that, after one entire week of the Indigo Disc DLC being out, we were finally able to complete our shiny hunt for all the starters, and I can now actually start playing through the story itself. And I know I promised at the end of my Teal Mask playthrough, which I didn't forget about, but yes, I will also be playing through the entirety of the Indigo Disc DLC with only shiny Pokemon, and stay tuned because that video will be out soon. Anyways, I hope you all stay safe and healthy always, and I'll see you guys next time.